r/AskReddit teachers of Reddit. What was the most obvious teacher crush someone had on you? I had a kid ask me to marry him the other day. Then he proceeded to say I would be way too old for him by the time he was old enough to get married. The best day of your life and the worst day of your life. Kids are so cruel with their marriage proposals. I'm not a teacher, but I do have a story of when I was a HS student. It was my senior year, and I had a crush on this young history teacher. He would come on model-on trips with us as a chaperone, so he knew who I was. It was my birthday and he heard from a different teacher across the hall. He said, "Happy birthday" to me, and my response was, "Thanks, I'm 18. I blurted it out very quickly and realized literally the second it left my mouth how inappropriate it was. His response, "Well, you can vote now." Kids and teenagers always announce their age on their birthdays. The teacher may not have noticed what you think they noticed. When I find out someone is 18, I always encourage them to register and vote, saying, "Otherwise, all the taxes you pay will go to old people stuff." Bit of a different one this. Parents' evening. Single mom comes in to talk about her son. Her youngest daughter, probably about 4, runs in, jumps on my knee and exclaims, "My mommy says you're going to be our new daddy." Longest parents' evening of my life. How did the mom react to this? She actually handled it really well. Just came out with something along the lines of, "Oh, isn't she silly?" Obviously I just tried my best to ignore it and get through the appointment as quickly as possible. I was 24 at the time, and the only male teacher in the school, and the first in several years, so I was fairly experienced when it came to dealing with comments made by students. But this one threw me right off. I teach at a local university, and I've had a few, including one who used to sketch me during class, one who tried to put his arm around me, etc. The most obvious and persistent was a student who used to follow me after class every day, show up at my office just to talk, and spend all of his time attempting to look down my shirt. He ended up dropping out of college halfway through the semester. I was a special needs teacher. There was zero subtlety. One student would constantly try to lift up my skirt. Straight to the point, I see. My second year teaching, we had a brand new teaching assistant in the special needs class who was this very outgoing redhead who was very well endowed in the chest area. One student took an instant like to her and was constantly grabbing her boobs. She wore turtlenecks and sweaters most of the year and a lot of scarves. This kid was relentless. She didn't last the full year. I felt really bad for her. She transferred to the elementary school after spring break. I teach at a university and students ask me out. I had a student once ask me out in front of the class while I was teaching, but I think it was more a power move than anything else. Edit. Bonus story. I teach a sexuality class and a student brought up nigging. I asked the class for a definition and one dude goes, "You're pretty for a sociologist." The entire class was horrified that he had nigged me. Had a teacher in high school who had the same thing happen to her. She looked at the kid and said, "Honey, I teach all day, don't have time to teach at night too." That shut him down pretty quickly. My first year teaching high school. The A/V department made an end-of-the-year tape for the students every year as a keepsake. That year they allowed a senior to profess her love to me on the tape. I didn't know she had done this, and they had allowed it until it played over their A/V system to the whole school. Needless to say, I was pissed. But I couldn't make too much of a stink because I didn't want a lot of attention drawn to it. And they weren't going to take it out. Fuckers. Teach English in China. The girls will literally say, "I have a crush on you." This happened to me when Chinese exchange students visited my school. They are very straightforward. They aren't really used to privacy in this country. Government probably knows about your crushes before you do. Not a teacher, but used to be a Cub Scout guide. One of our boys, 10-yo, had a crush on my adjutant, 16-yo girl. He swore she will be his girlfriend one day, and was strangely serious about it. We laughed it off, and forgot about it. Years went by, the boy became a man, joined the army, came back, went to medical university, got buff and handsome, and reached out to his old crush on Facebook. They got married last May, and have a baby girl. A student who had a crush on me wrote a straightforward proposition and asked another teacher to deliver it to me. This teacher was a mentor of sorts to the student, so you'd think he'd do something wiser and more responsible than what he actually did, which was deliver the note and threaten me with some form of unspecified violence if I told anyone. so I informed the principal, and both the student and teacher were transferred to other schools. In the days of mission, I got a chat invite from someone who had the same last name as me. I assumed it was a relation, but they didn't say anything, and so I left for a bit to eat. I came back and saw a couple more people had been added to the chat, and so they'd been talking about me. I realized they were students because they referred to me as Miss Dash Dash. They were teasing one of the others for his crush on me, and he was defending my massive ass as hot. I can vouch for that. Massive asses are hot. Not a teacher, but I had a crush on a lunch lady while I was in the first grade, and I would always say, "Hey good looking, what you got cooking?" She knew what was up. "Did you get extra slop in the chow line?" I was always allowed to go up for sloppy seconds. Yeah. Sloppy joes are awesome. I still have them like once a week. Not me, but when I was in school, a teacher found another student's very graphic erotic fanfiction about him. Ended up having a conference with her parents, counselor, and principal. Girl got transferred to a different classroom, but tried to shoot up the school with what she thought was her brother's secret gun. It was a toy he modified to look real. Hadn't seen or heard about her since, but before I graduated, the school made it a rule that staff were not to be depicted in any creative work, and if any such work was found, the owner was looking at suspension. Not me, but my best friend's husband. He's mid-20s and attractive, but fairly average looking. He started teaching high school a few years ago, and his female students would flirt hard. He told me a female coworker was chatting with him in the hall at one point, and later his female students started badgering him to find out if they were dating. Same teacher said, "Listen, do not let any of them catch you in a room alone. They will start rumors for clout that could get you fired." Later, one started an Instagram account of pics she and her friends would take in class and about the school. A couple stalked him at the mall and finally met his then fiancée, now wife. She told me they acted kinda jealous and seemed upset. She's fucking gorgeous. She found the obvious disappointment hilarious. He doesn't teach high school anymore, and I think aggressively flirty teenage girls may be one of the reasons. Laugh out loud. Not a teacher, a student. Back in middle school, 16 years ago, I had a crush on a teacher of mine, although I wasn't aware of the severity of it until it was too late. Around Halloween time, we were supposed to write a poem about a teacher of ours. I, of course, procrastinated until the night before and then realized that I lost the sheet with the contents of what the poem is supposed to be. All I knew was that it had to be about a teacher. So I chose my crush unbeknownst to me. The next day I show up to class and try and turn in my paper, where I was informed by my teacher crush that we were going to be reading our poems in front of two classes, separated by a sliding wall half the time. As other students read theirs, I quickly realized these poems were supposed to be Halloween related. I panicked because mine didn't fit the criteria and had nothing to do with Halloween. It wasn't until I was reading mine aloud that I felt the sudden rushing aha moment of what I had just confessed to the entire two classes. Both teachers from either side of the wall and the entire student body watched in stupefied horror as I read it aloud, voice and hands shaking. Too late to turn back. It went like this to start. Mr. Hopper, I have a dog named Copper. Mr. Hopper, you make my eyes popper. I don't remember the rest. When I finally looked at Mr. Hopper, his entire face and neck was red with embarrassment. We never spoke of it ever, and I avoided him like the plague. I'm sure it was the same around. If I was in that situation, I'd just tear up my paper and take the F. When I was in high school, I saw a handwritten letter on my English teacher's desk, while waiting to speak with her. Other kids were hanging around the desk, but I think I was the only one to spot and read the letter. It was sitting among piles of paperwork, partially obscured, but not hidden, so I suspect even the teacher hadn't seen it yet. Paraphrasing, but the letter went something like this: Mrs. S., I love your curves. I can't stop thinking about you. You are my favorite teacher because you have a great smile. I want to touch you and kiss you. There was more, but I didn't pull the letter from the pile to read it, because I realized how it would look for the teacher, and I was scared other people would see it. She was my favorite teacher at the time, and I suspected this note was very much not welcome, judging from her personality, very chill, friendly, professional teacher, and the fact that it wasn't hidden. You'd think a teacher-student relationship would be a little less obvious. I never told my friends. I never mentioned it to the teacher. I just kept quiet. I suspected she was the victim here, not the student, and I wasn't about to start any gossip about her, potentially getting her fired. A few years later, another student was kicked out of school for sexually harassing a new art teacher. It was so bad, she had anxiety attacks and sped from the room to a neighboring class to be with another teacher and escape him. He was finally kicked out when he sent her unsolicited dick pics. He got her number without her permission, and she took it to the school board and police. I suspect it was the same kid who wrote the letter, but I have no proof. When I was student teaching, a student very badly photoshopped a picture of his head onto my profile picture from social media, which had me and my now husband together. He posted it to his social media saying, "Me and my new girlfriend, Miss Wellsugar." Another student asked me to prom and gave me a rose. Hard no. I laughed it off, but I was actually super nervous I was going to get in trouble even though I hadn't done anything wrong. Last year, a student called me the sexy teacher in front of his friends. I don't think he had a crush on me, though. I think he was trying to get a rise out of me. It worked. I called his super strict mom immediately before calming down, so I was still very angry, and she, and I quote, whooped his ass. Thanks for listening and getting this far. I hope you all enjoyed, and remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed.